You're very welcome to this DCU Executive Education webinar on personal agility. My name is John McMackin. I'm a lecturer in the business school. I teach a lot of different topics, particularly around leadership skills, but I have a particular interest in agile and agile implementation. And I'm joined for this session by Kevin Empey, who has a particular expertise in the area of personal agility and the whole agile agenda. Kevin, if you maybe give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Hi, John. Many thanks for having me along. Delighted to be with you. This whole topic of organizational agility, it's been on the agenda before all this COVID epidemic came across, but of course it's now in high relief as well. And it's been an area of work of mine for some time. I had come from a business and technology background, but in the last 20 years or so, I spent most of my time in the people and leadership space of things. And a couple of years ago, set up Work Matters to really focus on changing world of work, the workforce of the future of work, all of that in the sort of, context that we were in, increased complexity and the rapid changes that we're seeing in the workplace, really focusing on those areas, both in the consulting and training side. And that has inevitably brought me into one field around in the agility space, because that seems to be an area that we really need to solve for at an organizational level and personal level. So that's brought me into this space.
Great. Okay. Well, it's great to have you here. We really appreciate you taking the time from a very busy schedule. And so I'm just going to share my screen so we can see some slides for the session, and we're going to talk through this a little bit. This slide just introduces Kevin, and the session is entitled Personal Agility, an Overview. But I suppose we can't deal with personal agility without dealing with what is agile to begin with. And so I'm just going to try and position the conversation around what agile is, why it matters now more than ever, and then to let Kevin take us through what that the more neglected topic, I think, of what that means for an individual and at an individual level. So, and we'll conclude with a look at what, from a leadership perspective, you can be doing to position your organization for effective agile implementation and to become more agile. So as outlined in this slide here, I suppose agile is the ability to adapt, and if ever we needed a reminder, I suppose, about why that matters, I don't think we need to make the business case. Sometimes we would start a session making the business case for agile, but I think that the environment is making that case now. We see endless examples of businesses trying to pivot their models to adapt even during the crisis to the varying demands and expectations of customers, from restaurants converting themselves into takeout and delivery or collect businesses to online retail businesses repositioning themselves rapidly as online businesses, and indeed our own organization, the university, repositioning itself for the moment as an entirely online operation from one which was very heavily classroom based in the up to very recently. So, and that transition, which was originally planned as a 3-year project, took place in 2 weeks. So the ability to adapt is only tested when the environment changes, but the pace of change is such that customer demands are going to continue to evolve more rapidly. We can't really predict what those demands or expectations will be, so we have to be able to adapt, and that's why agile is so important and is an essential capability for any organization to have a sustainable future. The other dimension of this that I think sometimes gets forgotten in conversations about agility is that the big value of agile as a perspective is that it's a focus on the flow of value to your customer. So it sounds very simple in a business sense, but customers tend to get forgotten in in business and in universities too. We tend to talk about students rather than customers, but however we describe them, their needs are at the center, should be at the center of everything we do. And what Agile does is really encourage the organization and push the organization to continuously revisit the extent to which what they're doing is designed around creating a flow of value as efficiently as possible to the customer. What tends to happen in reality is that organizations tend to, over time, become what's called resource efficient. So they're designed around making best use of the resources they have, whether that be professors in a university or patients in a doctor's clinic. If you've sat in a waiting room with many other sick people to visit your general practitioner, you will be experiencing resource efficiency, that the whole operation is designed to make best use of the time of the doctor, not really to meet the needs of the customer, which is you, the patient. So in an agile world, that whole process gets redesigned around making best use and minimizing the waste involved in utilizing the resource efficiently. So that's kind of a 1 minute introduction, I suppose, and many of you will be already familiar with these concepts. And so I suppose it's so agile is really is ensuring that your organization focuses its energy on the value it delivers to your customer. And it sounds such a simple idea, but simple ideas are very, very difficult to sustain and maintain and introduce in complex organizations, because currently the status quo means that people have invested time, energy, and resources in creating the current way of doing things and have developed expertise in that. And so implementing Agile, although it sounds like a simple concept, is a very complex transformational organizational agenda. And it affects all levels of the organization. So from if you consider from levels of analysis, as we say in research, there's the organization as the level of analysis, and as reflected in this slide, agility has to be embedded in the organizational level. So that looks not just at strategy, but at the culture of the organization, and we'll come back to that later because that's critically important. More typically and more easily understood is that you have to look at your structure and all of your processes, where the decision making takes place. Agile pushes decision making to the front line. What kind of technology, what workforce and HR practices used, what learning and customer mindset. And so all of these things tend to get attention. If you're talking about introducing Agile in an organization, there's lots of support for this type of stuff, and there's lots of research about how to do it and what to do. There's lots of consulting resources available for organizations wishing to do it. Similarly with teams, to not quite to the same extent, but certainly there's a lot of research and a lot in the practice introductions of Agile that would emphasize empowered teams and the criticality of organizing in teams and how you can set yourself up for success in that. The third level, which is probably the foundation level in many ways, is individual agility and the individual behaviors that support an agile organization. And this is where Kevin, I think, has really drawn attention to something terribly important, a neglected dimension of agile. And I'm going to hand over to Kevin to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure, John, thanks.
So Kevin.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, and even there on that last slide you had, and then moving into this research, it's just supporting really what you're talking about. And I loved your reference as well. It's a very vivid one, isn't it? The health system. And I'm sure there's going to be papers written on this. The thing about the current situation, I suppose we have to remember, is it's a very tragic and human situation involving life and death and our friends and our families and everything else like that. But if you can detach yourself from that for a second and just think of it from a world of work point of view, it's an incredible situation that we're seeing right now. Just the examples you gave in terms of the university. But even at the healthcare system is a very vivid one. At the organizational level, you're seeing some of the bureaucracy and hierarchy just blown away, aren't you, in terms of just finding a path through to value, which is to the patient in terms of what is the minimum, what's the minimum bureaucracy and red tape we need to be able to serve the patients that we have right now, and their ability structurally to be able to sort of reconstruct departments. Was it Mercy in Cork, I think, that just turned a cancer unit into a COVID nursing, I think it was a nursing centre into a cancer treatment area, because the rest of the hospital was so much obsessed with the COVID. So that's structural agility. And then at individual level, we're seeing medical staff, doctors, nurses, porters, doing whatever is needed to deliver that value, if you want to put it in those terms, to the patient, and people crossing professional boundaries that we've probably never seen before. Physiotherapists working in ICU or in nursing care, or people involved in cleaning that weren't involved in cleaning before. It's just an interesting case study, isn't it, in terms of this agility, but unfortunately brought by a very tragic and sudden, this emergency situation. But I guess it is time to reflect on, well, why do we have to wait for an emergency to be able to create that culture and that adaptability and that nimble agility, as we say here? And so the research is backing this up. This isn't a new thing. In fact, probably last year we were talking about the rise of technology and automation and the complexity, globalization, the pace of change, was the driver, if you like, for the need for agility, as these examples are suggesting. But I suppose the pandemic has just made us realize that there's other drivers apart from those things too, very vivid and very close to home. So you're right. I guess at the individual level, just like that nurse or doctor who's had to cross professional boundaries, to be more agile in an emergency situation, I just felt, this needed a bit of attention. And some of the research here is just, pointing to that fact that, and particularly that last one by McMackin and Selsky, talking about both agility and resilience being needed in dealing with turbulent times, right? It could have been written for now. It was actually research done in the last crisis. And it was talking about what was the evidence around people who seemed to not just survive and cope with the crisis, but actually thrive and be able to adapt quicker than others. And the agility and resilience point came up. Is it one or both? And I think sometimes we, especially as leaders, I think we have to be precise enough with our language, because these terms are thrown around, aren't they? And sometimes they're interchangeable. And what is agility and all of that? And where does resilience stop and start? And just as a helpful metaphor for me on this stuff is I think resilience for me really captures that capacity to be able to absorb disruption, to be able to bounce back and persist, if you like, in difficulty. It's the survival kind of competence, isn't it? It's the one that just helps me break through and just deal with but it's kind of a negative orientated idea, isn't it? It's kind of dealing with difficulty type idea. And I think agility, which is really the other side of the same coin as far as I'm concerned, is probably the more forward-looking, if you like, the more positive, progressive aspect here. So a bit like the tree, if the roots, if you like, are able to survive any conditions as they are in the picture, the tree is blooming, right? It's actually adapting to the environment around it, rain, hail, or snow, different seasons, etc. But it's a sense of being able to thrive and to move a forward movement, if you like, in the right direction, in a forward direction. So if resilience is the survive bit, I guess agility is the thrive bit, both interrelated. And I guess at individual level, which is what we're talking about here for a few minutes, if I'm not mixing my metaphors, John, but something like this where you've got, and so many athletic examples work here, is if I'm in that kayak, it's the resilience that helps me kind of deal with the knocks, right? So the wave knocks me over, I get back up again. The weather, the conditions, the currents, I can't do anything about them. I have got to be strong. I have to have a strong core and a resilience, if you like, to cope with that. But what helps me actually surf the wave? What helps actually makes me able to navigate these conditions? We can't change the weather, we can't change the currents, we can't change the force or the individual characteristics of a wave, but we can learn how to navigate it. And we can learn the skills to actually positively progress and get to where we want to go and take our control of our own path, if you like. And that's the skill set I was kind of interested to look at more. As the conditions in work and business change so rapidly, how can I as an individual feel like I'm in some form of control, even though this environment is changing all around me? What is the skill set that I can proactively understand and deal with? Because otherwise, I'm going to be left just kind of adapting and being rocked around, if you like, by conditions. So that's what we spent. We spent almost 2 years to researching what were the kind of skills, the specific skills associated with individual agility and personal agility. And we asked organizations home and abroad and far and wide, big companies, small companies, give us examples of individuals and what they did in order to thrive in this sort of an agile working environment. What was it that they did? What was it they were about? And why did they seem to enjoy their work, be engaged and be positively orientated in this sort of VUCA environment, if you like, complex environment, versus others who might just be struggling to cope and to catch up like a lot of us are sometimes. What were the skills? Because if we could identify those skills, then we could do something about it, right? If we knew what we were dealing with, we could then recruit for those skills. We could develop them in ourselves and in others. We could promote people into leadership positions who are able to cultivate these skills in others and indeed have them themselves. So I won't go into detail on these. There's a white paper there, linked that people can take at their leisure. But very quickly, I mean, the obvious ones, and a lot of these are very intuitive, and they've been with us in the human race for thousands of years. I suppose what we were just trying to do was capture them and surface them in the context of a complex work environment and agility. And this is what came through loud and clear from the research. And that learning mindset, for instance, that growth mindset, that openness to learn new things and to let go, if you like, old things, like you mentioned before, let go maybe practices and habits and behaviors that maybe suited a particular phase in our business, but now we need to move it. So that openness to learning and letting go. The orientation to change. Am I negatively, do I resist change, or do I embrace it and take it on in a positive way? And that's where resilience comes in. Resilience and adaptiveness are the two competencies underneath change orientation. So it's that sense of change ability, that ability to change, and that orientation to change. The autonomy and empowerment is interesting. Do I want to be in charge? Do I want to have control over what I'm doing? And is the environment that I'm in enabling me to have that accountability and ownership over what I'm doing? That's what a lot of people crave, is just a sense of control and ownership over my development and over what I'm doing and over my job and my work. And then those human skills that we hear so much about, relationship management, and being able to reach out and network and find the answers to questions, complex questions, through others, and to be able to make those linkages, and to deal with conflict and things like that, which inevitably arise in a turbulent environment, and the collaboration, teamworking piece being so critical. But the one skill set, if you like, or competency that came really roaring through in the research, and it's the same with resilience as well, is this idea of purposefulness. Is about, if, like that guy on the on the kayak, if I'm kind of clear about what I'm trying to do and where I'm trying to go, if I'm clear about my goal and my destination, if I'm clear about what's important to me personally, and I'm able to reconcile that perhaps with where the company is going and the organization is going. If I can really be more clear about where I'm going and why I'm going there, then that tends to be a real, very helpful rudder, if you like, or a North Star type idea for people. And that automatically opens them up to learning, opens them up to change, because they are clear on where they're going. And they're not just being bounced around by circumstances. I don't know if that makes sense. So we found that these 6 areas anyway were really coming through loud and clear. And some of them were on the individual side, very learnable skills, very identifiable, learnable skills that I can do no matter what work environment or that I'm in, I can learn them. The other ones, on the left-hand side, the more social ones, are ones that do require, if you like, me to be in an environment which is conducive to those things. So it's this collection of skills anyway that we thought was useful to bring it up into the debate so that HR folks and leaders would be more aware of the ingredients that they need to look for in their teams if we've any chance to achieve organizational agility. Because otherwise we're just asking people to be agile without giving them any sense of what that means for them individually. So that brings us really back to the story then in terms of, well, how do we do that and how do we create that agility? But hopefully that was helpful just to kind of shine a bit of a light on what all this talk around agility and adaptiveness and resilience means for me individually.
Yeah. That's absolutely great, Kevin. I think it's a very, very important dimension of Agile that doesn't get enough attention, hasn't in the research, doesn't in practice, and I think that it's the foundation stone around which on which the whole sustainability of Agile is dependent. And so I think you've given us great food for thought there. I had hoped we'd have a little time to explore just how to go about it, but perhaps that's for another day because we're up to our time here, and we're conscious that people have so many things going on. But can I suppose just the slide here summarizes, if on the left hand side is leadership agility, I think is something that we that is the biggest challenge in many ways, is that if you acknowledge that your organization needs to become more agile, what do you plan to do that will address not just the introduction of tools and techniques of Agile, but go way beyond that to transforming your organization and considering, I hope as a result of this conversation, a balanced view across not just that organizational level agility, but also what it means for teams, and in particular what it means for the individuals in your organization and how you're going to support and enable that.
Yeah, so, I think John, just on that, I think you're dead right. And just to finish my point of that, I just think the current environment actually gives us an opportunity to experiment with some of these ideas and to see, well, what does this look like? And the idea of giving empowerment, for instance, devolved decision-making, devolved responsibility to teams, asking them what they're about, acknowledging their agility, for instance, and acknowledging that they are displaying intuitively some of these skills. I think the current environment actually provides us with a big experiment, if you like, in terms of how we could try some of these ideas and then take them forward when things improve. That's all I'd say on that. I think it's
and I think that's a great note to finish on. So my thanks to the Centre for Executive Education for hosting this, and we hope we've created a little bit of value for you as customers or potential customers in a truly agile way. So thanks again, and thanks to Kevin indeed for taking time to do this for us.
No problem. Take care.
Thanks, Kevin.